At some point in my rum drinking career, I realized I was getting kind of bored of your standard 40% ABV offerings. They kind of started tasting like water, and to be fair, they are 60% water. And then I realized I was also getting numb to the standard oak and barrel notes of aged rums. I just didn't particularly crave notes of like caramel and vanilla. None of that stuff excited me. I just wasn't feeling it. So what do you do in a situation like that? Well, if you're anything like me, you begin to chase after anything that will make you feel something, or something that will make you feel anything. Now that search ultimately led me to what are now my favorite types of rums. Big, bold, white rums. What do I mean by big, bold, white rums? Well, by big and bold, I mean rums that are high in ABV and strong in flavor. Rums that aren't shy, ones that you can smell a mile away, and ones that demand your complete attention. And by white rums, I simply mean unaged rums. None of that like lightly aged and then charcoal filtered stuff that makes it look like it's unaged. Now you ask, what's the big deal about rums being unaged? Because in my opinion, it allows the base distillate to shine through, for the flavors of the cane juice or molasses to be the stars, and for the weird and wild flavors created during fermentation to take center stage without the distraction of traditional wood-derived flavors. Now, if you're new to rum and you're thinking, this doesn't really sound like any of the white rums that I've had, well, I'm not really talking about those mass market white rums. Those are meek, lightweight rums that totally have their time and place, but I'm talking about their grown-up cousins. And also, these aren't necessarily really like newcomer friendly, both from the perspective of the high ABV and also the out there flavors and their intensity. It took me years to begin to appreciate these kind of rums and to actually crave them. Now at the time I thought maybe I was kind of crazy for being so into these rums, but then I realized I wasn't alone. See, I came across an article by Lance Surujbally, better known as the Lone Caner. Now, I found that article on his website, thelonecaner.com, and if you've never been on his site, he's a thoughtful rum reviewer and writer with, frankly, the best tasting notes in town. He's like absolutely the GOAT, and his website is a treasure trove of rum knowledge. Anyways, he had a list of what he called 21 great white rums, and a lot of the rums that I loved were on that list. And thanks to him, I realized, hey, maybe these types of rums were worthy of celebrating and championing. So, being inspired by Lance's articles on great white rums, which I'll link below, I'm here today to spread the good word about these rums and share with you 3 of oh so many big bold white rums that I simply adore. So let's start off with the most straightforward of the 3, which actually happens to be the one with the highest ABV. Clocking in at 70% alcohol by volume, this is Neisson L'Espirt. This is an unaged Rhum Agricole from Martinique, and as with all Rhum Agricoles from Martinique, it's made from cane juice and column distilled. Now, what makes this special is that it's actually pretty close to still strength. Most of the other agricoles that are available from Neisson and other producers are usually proofed down to 40 or 50 or 55% ABV, but this one I think is just diluted just ever so slightly to get us to that 70%. So let's give it a try. As you can imagine, you can smell it from here, that's for sure. So really, the thing that really stands out is like a perfumey musk. And there's like this really nice note of like rose water and like fresh, wet apples. First rum of the day. Whew. What a one to start on, huh? Oh. So, to be fair, that first sip is just part acclamation, you know? But as you can imagine, at 70% ABV, it definitely is not shy. All right. This may seem like I'm not having a good time, but trust me, I am. What's crazy to me is after that first crazy initial sip, every subsequent sip, it doesn't taste like this is 70% ABV. Remarkably, still incredibly flavorful, but it's not like you're getting hit in the mouth with a sledgehammer. Definitely a punch, for sure, but it's just full of so many great flavors, like rich, robust, technicolor flavors. And in this case, a lot of like fresh sugarcane, some of that vegetal green grass, but really, for me, it's a lot of raspberries and a lot of fennel. Yeah, that combination, I don't know if I've ever had anything that's got some raspberries and fennel in it, but here, it's so good, it's lovely. Besides drinking the rum neat, I also really like it in a big bold tea punch with a little bit of ice. Oh yeah. The inclusion of ice really helps uncoil the rum and make it bloom. It kind of becomes the best of both worlds. It has the temperature and dilution that makes it pretty drinkable, but it's not weak or watered down in terms of flavor. Now, given that it started at 70% ABV, proof down with the ice, it's still incredibly impactful. On a hot summer day when you want some ice in your tea punch, but you don't want to sacrifice flavor, this is the way to go. Next up, we're dropping down to a measly 69% ABV and going to Grenada. It's the one and only Rivers. This is an unaged cane syrup rum made by River Antoine Distillery. Now the distillery has been around since 1785, and a lot of the equipment and methods haven't really changed much over the centuries. Water from a nearby river is diverted to power a water wheel, and it's that water wheel that powers a lot of the operations at the distillery, including the rollers that crush estate-grown sugarcane. There's not really any gas or electricity involved in this process. Now the cane juice from those crushed canes is heated and transferred between a series of metal pots until it's reduced down into a syrup. Now fermentation of the cane syrup takes place in open concrete tanks, and fermentation is completely wild, all from the ambient yeast and bacteria in the air and in the tanks. Altogether, fermentation takes about 8 days, plenty of time to create all sorts of big, bold flavors. Then distillation takes place on a direct fire double retort pot still. Let's give it a try. You can smell it right away. Oh yeah. I can't like act cool in front of Rivers. Like the moment I smell it, the moment I drink it, I act like a little child, frankly. It's just so Rivers. So on the nose, tons and tons of brine. Lots of brine and some slate as well. But the note that, that I'm picking up that's kind of also interesting is like fresh, wet, like chopped tomatoes and cucumbers. Yeah, like a tomato cucumber salad. All right, let's give it a taste. Oh yeah, oh boy. Like a million things just happened in my mouth. So, okay, what does it actually taste like? It's oily. There's burnt rubber, maybe. There's a note that makes your face go like this, which, that's a thing. Now, but if I really had to describe this, I'd say the flavor profile, once you kind of get used to those kind of crazy burnt notes, those kind of slightly smoky notes, once you get used to all that, there's a little bit of like sweet, salty slate, but there's also like a savory element as well, like a savory herbaceousness. So there's a lot to love about Rivers. It's black and woman owned. The label itself looks like it was colored with a crayon, but also the fact that while the rest of the world has modernized, Rivers has kind of just stayed Rivers, and there's something kind of cool about that. So I really love drinking Rivers neat, but an all Rivers daiquiri, frankly, is like simply sublime. But you know what it's also really good in? In a Negroni riff. Shout out to Kate Perry from Maison and Velier for this variation called the Grenada Royale. So what's really cool about this drink is that in addition to using Rivers, you're actually subbing in some Averna for the Campari, and you put in some dashes of chocolate bitters and black lemon bitters. Woo! Okay, so you end up with something that tastes like a funky chocolate caramel covered banana. It's as good as that sounds, trust me. And lastly, we have Holmes Cay Reunion Island Grand Arome Rum. So Holmes Cay is an independent bottler here in the States, and they source this rum from Savannah Distillery on the French island of Reunion, which is located in the Indian Ocean. Now, Grand Aromes are a specific type of rum made in a number of French islands like Reunion. So their big, bold flavor basically comes from long fermentation times and the use of dunder, which is the acidic leftover remains of previous distillations. And the more acids that are present during fermentation, the more flavor compounds that are created. It's no different than like funky Jamaican rums. So this rum is made from molasses with about a 7-day fermentation time using specific yeast and bacteria, and of course dunder. Now, after fermentation, it's distilled on a Saval copper column still, and it's of course not aged, and it's bottled at 57.5% ABV. Now, just like the high ester rums from Jamaican distilleries, Grand Aromes weren't really designed to be consumed, or at least not solely. They were meant as a blending component to be added in small amounts to a more lighter rum or other spirit. A little of this stuff can go a long way to create a flavorful rum. So, given that the intention was to never drink this straight, you can imagine that this stuff probably packs a punch. All right, let's give it a try. Oh boy, There's gonna be a lot of people who don't necessarily vibe with the smell, but let me tell you, it is so damn interesting. So it is, real talk, nail polish remover and ketchup. But not like actual tomato, I mean like ketchup, like think McDonald's ketchup packets. Yeah, specifically packets, because what I mean by that is like you get that like smell of like sweet tanginess that maybe comes from ketchup, even though there may not actually be a whole lot of tomato in those ketchup packets. But it's also like a little bit of that smell of the plastic from the packet itself. That's what I'm getting on the nose. All right, let's give it a taste. Ooh. Can I just say that that is wild, so wild, and I could see why people would not vibe with that, but I love it. It is so weird and wild and out there. Oh yeah, I'm feeling things, man. Yo, okay. I love it so much. I think after a couple sips, you notice throughout the tasting that there's this layer of like sugar water, like sweet sugar water. And then there's also like this push-pull between like briny tropical fruits and like a savory vegetal quality. Now, all of that sounds probably just fine, but it also kind of tastes like bandages and licking a battery. It's like taking a dry cloth bandage and scraping it across your tongue. It basically tastes like industrial waste. Yeah, and look, of all of the 3 rums in this video, this might be the hardest to get behind. That industrial waste note, that little bit of like marker and bandage note, isn't for everyone. Hell, I'll admit that it's not even for me most of the time. It's challenging for sure. But sometimes I just want something that's out there, something that's gonna make me sit up, that's gonna punch me in the palate. In times like those, I'm gonna reach for this. So how do I drink this rum? Well, neat for sure. I really do like all those flavors that I described. And in cocktails, obviously, as you can imagine, this dominates most of what you put it in. Though recently, I have been enjoying it in a spice daiquiri riff called Accidents Will Happen. This is a recipe from Mike Hooker, who is the brand ambassador for Holmes Cay. It's crazy to me how much this rum is transformed in this cocktail. So the use of rich cinnamon syrup and mole bitters plus some really heavy chilling and dilution really helps balance out the strong, intense flavors of the rum. And it creates like a brisk, crushable cocktail, which is crazy to say given the strong, intense notes of the rum. So there you go. Those are just 3 of the big, bold white rums that I adore. Now, these might not be your cup of tea or your daily sipper, but I believe there's an absolute time and place for rums like these. And if you're tired of the same ho-hum rums, then consider giving these a try. And if you don't like them, well then there's a whole wide world of other big, bold white rums with incredibly diverse flavor profiles out there. I believe there's a big, bold white rum out there for you. So keep an eye out in the future for more in this series. Now, if you're interested in checking out some exclusive behind the scenes content and first impressions videos where I try a rum for the very first time and give you my gut reaction to it, then consider checking out and supporting me on my Patreon. I have tons of content on there that I think you'll really like. And lastly, what I want to know is, are there any big, bold white rums that you simply can't live without? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. Catch you next time. Cheers.